Oh, my name is Molela Cele. Today the date is the 10th of April 2010. We are at Inanda Seminary. Today I'm interviewing Mr. Cecil Zondi, the former teacher and principal of Inanda Seminary, the former teacher at Ohlange High School here at Inanda, former inspector of libraries in KwaZulu, and former president of the Library Association here in Natal. Baba, my first question, when were you born and where were you born?
I was born in 1928, November 4, at a place called Wasbank, near Ladysmith.
And Baba, can you give us your names in full? You are famously known as Mr. Cecil
My
Zondi.
names in full are Dumisani Cecil Zondi. Although you initially said Cecil Zondi, many people in Devon have known me as Cecil Zondi. But as I told you, when I became decolonized, I remembered my roots and I changed to Dumisani Cecil Zondi because in my home, my father was the only boy out of 8 girls. And after marrying my mother, he got the firstborn, my elder brother, who was named Hulumeni, following the Bambata resistance at the time that my father grew. And then I became the second born, and it was a boy again. And my father said, "Oh, thanks, good Lord. Dumisani, praise the Lord." Oh, indawo engazalelwa kuyo, indawo yasemakhaya. Sikhule thina kufika amasotsha ngempi kaBhambata eza kumkhulu ezomcela ukuthi ayothatha ubukhosi engxenyeni yabantu bakwaZondi ngasemgungundlovu. Ngakho ke ngumuntu wasemakhaya.
And Baba, your primary education, where did you obtain your primary education?
Primary education yami was at Acton Homes, where I attended school the first year. And when we got to school, the teacher there, he was a Mr. Hadebe. The teacher there, who was principal, was very, very strict. And if you came late, you stood along the wall, facing the wall, and pushing the wall, and getting it on the backside. And the schools those days were not schools like the ones you see here. They were mainly churches or homes in rondavels. So the principal had an office at the corner. He had his table there. So Mr. Hadebe would come and say, "Push the wall," and we pushed the wall, and he gave it to us right from the backside down to your feet. I ran away, and the boys who chased me couldn't catch me, and I stayed at home the first year. The second year, my father was promoted to principalship, and that was when I got started with my primary schooling. And it went on reasonably well. I suppose you want me to continue from primary school?
Yeah, Baba, if you can take me straight up to your
Yeah, from primary school we went to secondary school. Secondary school I did at Dundee, which was the only and the best school in Natal for Africans. It was headed by Mr. H. Molife. Mr. Molife didn't have a degree, but there were teachers who had degrees, people like Mr. Malaza, people like Mr. A.T. Sililo, who came here from Devon, Mr. Mbata, who came from Inkandla, he recently died, and that was when we had my primary schooling together with other youngsters. But because I came from Wasbank, which was very far from home, I had to work in Dundee for a colored family. So I was sort of garden boy and kitchen boy. And I had my first experiences with the white people, their relations with the black people. Well, I did my matric at Indaleni. At Indaleni, that was when I became conscientized about race relations. I'm not going to go deep into that.
And Baba, you also did some studies overseas. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I first went to Chicago, University of Northeastern Illinois, where I studied for a master's in education. And before leaving, I had a bursary from one of the ladies, one of the great supporters of Inanda Seminary. And I went to do a master's degree in library science, the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania.
When did you come to Inanda Seminary as a teacher?
I first got to know Inanda Seminary. It must have been somewhere in the 60s when I was about leaving Ohlange. And like I said, we used to come to Inanda Seminary with the students and so on. And then I saw this a beautiful mistress, and I couldn't stop proposing to her. And that was how then I got to know Inanda, not realizing that I was going to end up as a teacher at Inanda, end up also as a librarian, because one of the reasons why I got more service to Inanda was through this lady. They had a library, but it was not organized. So I used my expertise to organize the library right up to the stage in which you see it now. But this was how I got to know Inanda. As a librarian, as a teacher, later on as a deputy principal and then a principal. I taught biology. And then they had what they call physiology and hygiene. Thus I taught at Ohlange, and when I came here, I taught matric biology and also organized the library.
Baba, can you tell us also the history of the school in the seminary?
Oh, well, Inanda Seminary, many of you know, was started 1869 by an American lady, Mary Kay Edwards, who had lost her husband. And the Lindley family occupied the house which is now called Mission. It was called the Mission House, but now it's the administration building. And Lindley actually initiated, Mrs. Lindley initiated the founding of this school, because they said, look here, we have Amanzi Mtoti. And Amanzi Mtoti was then a school for males. Pastors, teachers, etc. were taught at Amanzi Mtoti. So Mrs. Lindley and Lindley said, look here, we are civilizing those people at Adams. Who are they going to marry? These naked girls? And then the board in New York realized that it was actually important to breed people of your same level. And this is what happened. Many of the people who got married at the time, they married between Inanda and Damanzimtoti. You can talk of Chief Albert Lutuli, you can talk of many others. Well, it was an American-founded institution, and normally they had to have teachers from America. And they also tried to get teachers from around, but they were not as educated as the white Americans. So more teachers at the beginning were Americans.
And in the 60s?
Well, later on, you know, if you look into the minutes which I have kept, you know, here, you will find that when there was a staff meeting, it was a white staff meeting, no African. And I still can recall that later on, they included 3 black staff members into the staff meetings because, you see, they didn't have enough qualified people. Amazimtoti was yet a young institution to produce enough teachers to go around all the missions of the American board. The only principal who was here for the longest time was Miss Scott. And Miss Scott had taken over, not from the founder of the school, but she had taken over from one of the teachers whose name I forgot, you know. By the way, the teachers had to go and learn some Zulu before they came here. And this was one of the problems that Mrs. Edwards had, you know. There she was in that house. There weren't all these buildings. It was only that house which Daniel Lindley had left from Umzinyati, which is about a couple of miles from here. Now, there she was. The girls came, they didn't know what good morning was, Sawubona. And then she decided, oh, they are greeting me. Eventually, you know, they got this connection because she did almost everything with the girls. In the gardens, because most of the food was grown around here, and the girls had to stop learning sometime during the day, and they had to get down to the fields. By the way, Inanda is 3 miles from here, this side and that side. It was quite a big place, so it was easy to grow food. And downstairs I have a grinding stone. When the girls needed some porridge or they had some food, they had to kneel down and grind the corn.
And there was also a problem of water.
Well, water has been a very, very big problem at Inanda Seminary. I remember, you know, when I got here as a teacher, seeing the girls leave the dormitories, and there is no water. And after some rain, they had these face cloths, which they dipped onto the pools of water around, and they got cleaned. But later on, they became lawyers. They became teachers. They became mothers. Because, well, Inanda Seminary being a private institution,
Yeah.
you know, it had a problem of funds and so on. But later on that improved. While Ohlange was not even recognized by the department then, because it was an institution run by a black man. And at that time, you know, I think there was no belief that a black man could run an institution. So the recruitment depended on the school boards. Ohlange had a board and they had to get teachers. And Dube got teachers from North Africa and parts of South Africa, not necessarily the Zulus. And that was how you got people like the Moranes coming over to teach, you know, instead of saying, oh, you are Sutus, you can't come here. And this was how Inanda Seminary got teachers from around the world. Now, you are referring to Dr. Beyers-Naudé. Dr. Beyers-Naudé was a big friend of Inanda Seminary. So that the people in the board assisted the school when it needed assistance, by way of mentioning names and so on. One thing that Dr. Naudé will be remembered for at Inanda Seminary, it was the recruitment of one of the doctors who taught mathematics at Stellenbosch, Dr. Weigert. Dr. Weigert retired, and Dr. Naudé spoke to him, and he said, look here, you are still quite okay. Go and assist this school. And he gave reasons for that, and Dr. Weigert came. And, well, as a professor, his mathematics became too high. And the results in mathematics got down. But then I was then deputy principal. Then we talked and organized additional classes. And the following year, the results, you know, they surprised nearly everybody. Yes, Chief Luthuli was a member of the board and a great supporter of this school in many ways, because at the time, you know, the board was purely white at the beginning. Then later on, they got Dube. Dube was in fact among the first people to be on the board, as Ohlange was started after Inanda Seminary. And like I said before, Dube and the Inanda Seminary School were almost one thing. They were those inter-school exchanges, either academic or sports and so on. And then later on, Luthuli was brought in. But all of them, remember, they were members of the American board. They belonged to the church, and they taught the church language. Oh, B.K. Lula is one man that I have respect for. He came to Inanda Seminary. I am not going to mention that as a bachelor until he left as a bachelor. He is a bachelor now. But Lula came to Inanda as a minister of the church. Yeah. Then he was incorporated into the school board. And he supported, I think he is the longest supporter of the board that I can remember of, because He was chairman of the board for almost over 20 years. But his input into the affairs of the school was too great. Whenever there were problems, Lula would come around. Inanda produced people who were not only educated, but they had a respect for their culture. I've indicated to you the Bopelas, the Kumetes, and so on. And many people, I have referred to Seme now. Seme dates so far back, you know. And then there were many others who have made Inanda what it is today because of Inanda Seminary, Ohlange, and then various local schools. Yeah, I remember that at one time, 1 year, I created here a school, a night school for teachers around here so that the teachers could matriculate and earn a better salary, but not only that, but to widen the knowledge of their subjects. And we had a very good registration during the first year. And well, I was lucky enough that my teachers offered to teach, and we had to walk from here to the day school up there next to the post office to teach the teachers, because the teachers did not have the same qualification rather, as the white people and the Indian people. You had to have matric after learning for about 2-3 years at college. And then you didn't even still get the same salary. It was not until I was appointed to start the Umlazi College for Further Education that we had to upgrade the teachers who had a matric qualification so that they could get the same pay.